So Beth, let's talk about our website redesign and how we used AI to make it happen. So this has happened over the course of what, the last month, just the last few weeks.
Yep.
And I know before you started working with the AI tool, I had written some copy in terms of like what I thought could go on an about page and
Mhm.
some of our workshop info. And you used some of that in your initial prompt, right?
I used all of it. You may not know that I used all of it based on the output, but yeah, I used all of it.
Okay, well, that's something we'll definitely talk about as we look at the details of it, because sometimes I think I could tell that what I was looking at was related to the copy I'd written. Sometimes not so much. It was interesting in that respect. So I created a couple of docs and gave those to you, and then
Mhm.
you went into Lovable
Correct.
and you gave it that information as a prompt.
Yep.
And did you tell it anything else about like what tools to use or?
I didn't tell it what tools to use, but I have built tools where I explicitly asked for it to use React or TypeScript, and but not for this one. I didn't specify for this one. The only thing I specified was that this was meant to be a revamp for a consulting website, and it needed to have a level of professionalism.
Okay. So Lovable chose to use React to create that website. React is a web framework that we've worked with a lot on our team. And so it created this website, but this is not the first one that you showed me, I think. There was another one that was like purple.
The first one was awful. Yeah, no, the first one, I think they were trying to be space age or something. And so I actually asked it to have a minimalistic view in terms of what the what the format should be.
Mhm.
And it came back with, it gave me two choices. I didn't like those choices because I felt like it didn't understand. So I did a search and I provided examples of different companies' websites that I liked and what minimalism meant to me.
Mhm.
And then it
Okay.
gave me this.
And then give you this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which has a nice neutral kind of color palette with that pop of color. I
Yep.
totally like. It gives us a little mission statement teaser here.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so we went through and looked at the different sections. I went for the different iterations of this clipped this section because there is something like this in each layout, but the details change a little bit and sometimes the graphics change. And so I think it's interesting to compare what it did versus what I thought our copy was supposed to say in respect to these three offerings.
Hmm.
So here, this feels fairly grounded in what we had said about how there would be two workshop tracks, the kind of coaching that we're going to do, and the way that our development work is about taking those initial AI projects and turning them into finished things that people can make use of.
Yeah.
So this generally made sense. I think there's ways that like it all kind of like visually, I wish there was a little bit more pop, but
Hmm.
we'll kind of get into that too. So. This is the services page it created. Similarly, like I wish that there was some more contrast on the page, that things stood out more because right now it's just sort of like gray on gray.
Hmm.
But the copy looks pretty well tied to the kinds of things that we were talking about. And this is, I think, I should have put a label on this. This is either part of the about page or part of the services page also. I think here's where I start to see some things though that we didn't put in our pitch, right?
Correct.
Like ongoing support.
Uh-huh.
For example, in general, consultants should not offer free ongoing support just because, you don't have the time for it, you want
Yeah.
to be able to give people the most dedicated time that you can. And so if it's just completely open-ended, you're not doing that. It's not good for either party. Things like a community connection is great. But that wasn't something that we talked about, that like this was also a community forming kind of activity.
Right. Yeah.
So that is something that the AI tool kind of attempted to intuit from what we were doing and from maybe other copy that's out there.
Yep.
Okay. So then I looked at the thing that it had done and I said, I mean, because you gave me the
Yep.
um, GitHub repository, I looked at it and told you this is over-engineered. We're not going to deploy a React site. We already have a static site generator that we use with Jekyll and GitHub Pages, and we have a blog that's part of that. So what we need is just HTML and CSS.
Hmm.
Nothing, no other kind of like web application framework.
Right.
So I started doing some of that conversion myself, and I thought, well, maybe there's a faster way to do it. So I asked you,
Hmm.
can you have Lovable convert it to best practices HTML and CSS for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And I think that was the funny part where I believe we went through two iterations where I asked it to migrate to HTML, CSS, and it gave a partial. And then I asked it explicitly to use best practices. Um, and it errored out on me. And so I thought that I just had to wait the next day in order to have the code ready for you. But
Because
yeah,
you were out of tokens at that point, right?
I was out of tokens at that point. So,
Yeah. And I thought, well, maybe Beth has just forgotten to tell me that she ran the thing. You were busy.
mhm,
So I went and I looked at GitHub and saw that there were some commits, and I thought, great, I have my HTML. One of the things I noticed though was that it still had the original React site. There were just also other files that were static HTML and CSS, which for me doing the conversion, that was actually useful. But if you had been hoping that you were going to tell it just to do that, and then you'd have a final thing, and all that was in your GitHub repository was just that HTML and CSS, that is not what it delivered.
yeah, right. No,
So
and
that's just one of those places where we've got to check that we're getting what we think we're getting.
yes.
So when you told it to do the conversion, I thought, okay, so surely it will just take the components, it will convert them into HTML components, and that's all that will happen. But the copy changed.
Hmm.
Some of these things, I liked this headline a little bit better. Some of those things are totally fine, but if what I needed was to literally just convert it, then this wouldn't be okay. This would be a problem.
Yes.
Um, in our case, I was able to kind of take my original copy and the React version and the HTML version and put those together into what I thought we actually needed. But again, that takes some experience with HTML and CSS to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that I noticed aside from the headline changed is that the little cute bird thing no longer had legs. Like
Yeah.
it converted the site and it took the legs off the bird. Just thought
It no
that's kind
longer
of
it no longer resembles a crow. It's sort of like a weird eye.
yeah. I mean, you could see that as all sorts of things, I imagine, but it just so weird, so weird. So I went and I looked at the React version and I saw that it was using an icon library called Lucid. And so I went back to the Lucid website and I found the link that said download SVG, the vector graphic
Right.
format. And I replaced all of the reinterpreted birds with the original icon
Right.
and made a little in Jekyll you can make HTML snippets that you reuse throughout the site. So I
Oh,
made one
nice.
of those for each
Mhm.
of the icons that we were using so that anytime I needed to do it, I could include it actually very similar to the way that in React you can like import an icon and do that. With the HTML includes in Jekyll, you can do something very similar. So yeah, that way we always had the bird that had the legs on it that looked like the original intent.
Right.
So here the copy again has started to drift from what we originally had and what we were talking about. Most notably over here in the development section, where instead of saying we're going to take your prototype and finish it, it says that we're going to create custom AI solutions and integrations for your business needs and technical requirements, which is definitely not in the scope of what we're doing.
Right. Yeah. No, no. I always think of this as like AI drift, just from a product perspective. It's just like we're just gonna throw in some extra things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting guess.
Hmm.
Here are the services. some similar copy. The layout has a little bit more contrast to it, and I liked that. I liked the check marks that it added. So that's an item that I kept in the final design. Um, so this isn't too far from what we had.
Hmm.
But again, AI development, custom AI solutions, not on the table. That's not in
Right.
scope for us. And then I noticed another place where it had done this, adding the idea of continuous support to our offerings when that wasn't in the brief, wasn't
Mhm.
something that, I mean, we have, as a three-person team, had the capacity to do,
Right.
and it made me wonder, like, where that expectation is coming from. Are there other consultants that have copy like that? Is the AI just like really optimistic about free labor?
Right.
You know? Yeah. So I thought it's interesting. And then you also did a version in Firebase Studio because that's a tool that we've been working with on some of our
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yes.
and it looks different.
It does. It looks different. I think for me, the challenge that I have with Firebase is it asks me if I want to use a specific color palette, but it doesn't let you necessarily pick it. And so
Mhm.
I asked again for a minimalistic design.
Mhm.
This is what we got.
It would be nice when I mean, I like that in Firebase Studio, it gives you that sort of like document, the brief that
Yeah.
says like what it thinks we're going to build, what tools, and it gives you three little color dots for your color palette.
Yep.
I really wish that it was possible to preview what things were going to look like when you were still in that view, because
Yes.
it would be much easier to choose new colors if I could see how they were going to be applied.
Yeah, and I think that was the interesting thing is the colors. I assumed that the blue and green were going to be accents, and it was going to be more of that, I don't know, is that like a grayish
Mhm.
color? I thought that was going to be the bulk of it. So I was a little surprised.
Mhm. I mean, we got a gradient here even.
I know.
Yeah. But to me, the most noteworthy thing about this was that we had yet another interpretation of what a bird looks like.
Yeah, and unfortunately I didn't keep the first two versions because they were much worse.
It's impressive that this was, 3 rounds of you attempting to explain with graphics, right?
Oh, yeah, no, I uploaded our actual logo and said, "This is our logo. Can you use it?" Our logo does not look like that.
I just think like there are toddlers that can draw a better bird than this.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is really, really a struggle. And one of the funniest things I've seen one of our AI tools do. So
yep.
I had to be sure to include it so that people could see. And I had some other, like little icons of bird emojis to compare to. Like, if you squint, does it look like any of those?
No, no, it doesn't look like anything. And the thing is this is the one that's supposed to look like three birds.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have the actual logo at the end so that people can see.
Okay.
It does not have the form of
No.
any of those things. Or even if it just taken like all the dark spots or all the light, like
Yeah.
there are ways that you could have deconstructed that logo, but again, like I just want to show people like Google thinks this is a bird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um here I did you show it the versions from Lovable before it did this?
Nope. I used the same copy.
Okay. So we end up with this same like 3 panel thing. And that's why I wondered.
Hmm.
Because that was consistent across the various iterations of it. That like when we have the homepage summary of the services, it has these 3 sections.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
That
and
that that seems to just be the way uh their quote unquote standard practices, from what I can tell.
mhm, yeah. So it's interesting to discover that through this process too. Um, I noticed that the Firebase version of it said AI ML on a lot of things, like we were in a different area of this kind of practice, right? Where
Yep.
we're helping people more with, again, like that custom AI model
Yes.
stuff, which is not the area that we're currently working in. So that's another like interesting guess that I made. And another thing I've seen Firebase Studio a lot is to put these like placeholder graphics in
Hmm.
that tell you, which if you're doing like a layout project can be useful, but also if you're really visually oriented, you have to sort of imagine like what goes here, you know?
Yeah,
So I wouldn't mind some kind of a like placeholder image, right? That perhaps told you the size over the top of it, but gave you some ideas for like what could go there. Um, and the programmers workshop, again, we had an outline of what things that was going to cover, and this is not it.
yeah. It
I
just
mean,
it used some creative license for
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, like we have looked at some of the vector database type stuff, but that's not, again, the thing that we're working in right now, and that's not the workshop that we are currently prepping to do.
right.
Um, so I just thought it was interesting to me that the Firebase version of it sort of assumed we were going in a different technical direction
Hmm.
than we actually have been talking about. So
Yep.
interesting guesses. But here we are going to look at the final result and the website that we ended up with. So I mean I liked the neutral color scheme. I liked the pop of orange color. I put the original bird in there.
Hmm.
Looks much more plausibly like something that you might encounter out there in
Yeah,
reality. I replaced those buttons in the call to action section with our newsletter sign up because that's actually the thing that we like. If you just come to the website, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. The thing we most want is for you to sign up for the newsletter so that
right.
you can find out about, more of these resources that we're building. And here we have that three-panel section that has the sort of summary of services. And I took sort of combinations of the copy and came up with something that I thought was as close as possible to the thing that we originally talked about. I took some of the same motifs, but also picked different icons. Having that, Lucy's got a really nice big icon library. There's a lot to pick from, which was great. So I put together a layout that I thought made sense with that. Again, bringing in the copy that we had about what we're going to do. Something I didn't show, I think, in the other versions so much is like the details for
Hmm.
how the different services work. But here I took some stuff that was in the low contrast version and added that more contrasty styling so that we have like a card that kind of pops and then some more details with the call to action button.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a lot easier to read.
mhm. Yeah, that was my goal. The same thing here. I don't entirely, I mean, like this tech stack thing, I don't think quite communicates what we needed to. It's, I mean, it's more to say like, if you're going to give us a project to work on, it needs to be in one of these things that we've already built in.
Hmm.
Because I mean, for most people, it would be prohibitive, right, to have us like spin up an entirely new stack.
Yeah.
So that's more of it. It's, if we're building something from scratch, Beth, as you know, I'm an old school HTML person, so I'm going to pick
Right.
I'm not going to start with React if all we need is three web pages. I mean, that was
Hmm.
the thing. It was literally like a 3-page website. Um, doesn't need a lot of this other complication.
Yeah, apparently it just likes React.
And then I added in our bios because that's something that actually none of the iterations had a space for even. I thought was interesting. So I took the about page and kept some of the sort of layout details, but reshaped the language, put our bios in, and grafted things together in a way that I thought would make the most sense.
Yeah. No, and it looks good. And I think the color contrast makes a huge difference. And it's consistently really weird to me that AI does not take accessibility into account when it's doing front end anything. You have to ask for it, and oftentimes just link to what the best practices are.
Mhm. Yeah, there are tools that you can use, and I should run this against that for figuring out if your colors have appropriate visual contrast,
Hmm.
for example. And I know some of the versions of stuff that we got from the AI tools definitely wouldn't pass that bar. I think that the background is possibly a little too dark in that respect, but that's something that I can continue to tinker with because now that I've got it into our, Jekyll template for GitHub pages, it's very easy for me to change things.
Okay.
So now that we've gone through this process, it's really easy for me to like swap out colors, swap out some of the styling details, change from 2 columns to 3 columns.
Hmm.
Like we now have all the materials that we need to do that,
Okay.
which is great. That's part of what I wanted out of this was just to get a new base template that we
Hmm.
could iterate on. So I think in that respect, accomplished what we needed to.
Yeah, and the site looks great. So and I do appreciate the minimalistic, uh, kind of the minimalism of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it just for a 3-page website, you don't really want to have to upgrade your tools to keep
Hmm.
working on it. Like Jekyll's a little borderline in that respect because if you have a website long enough, you do eventually have to update the regen potentially.
Hmm.
But I've rarely had that process break things. I mean, for reference, my personal website's been using Jekyll for a decade probably.
Hmm.
And there's only been a couple of times that I had to tweak like some little detail because
Oh.
of the upgrade. Whereas
Hmm.
with React, we would want to, yeah, continue to upgrade it at some point.
Right.
Even if we were using fairly basic stuff, they do occasionally go through fairly major rewrites.
Hmm.
And so if you're going to keep deploying it onto any online cloud platform, you're going to need to make sure that things like stay up to date enough that you can do that.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, part of why I like compiling things down to HTML and CSS is that will always work. You can go find websites that have been online since the 90s and they still
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, so there's a lot of advantages to that. But that's my preference. So that's our website. And then I just wanted to end with our actual logo for comparison to
I
see
know.
what Google really just didn't understand. And yeah,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
and the QR code will take people to the site so they can see for themselves.
Nice. Awesome.
Any other final thoughts?
Um, I think I think for me, as I've been working through AI, the one piece that I continue to come back to is verify, verify, verify. Uh, you can have the best prompts in the world, and AI is still gonna do its AI thing. So verify that it did what you want.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you.